Apocalyptic Super Farm. Chapter 31 to 40. Chapter 31. The Charlatan. Hiroshi drove the hoe into the ground, marking the edge of where he planned to dig the fish pond with lines of lime. He surveyed the area and nodded in satisfaction. Digging a fish pond was a monumental task, and given the current state of the farm, hiring extra hands was out of the question. After some thought, Hiroshi decided to personally go borrow an excavator. Although he could buy such heavy machinery from the system's store, he was reluctant to spend his points on it at this stage. Given the current situation, money was rapidly losing its value, whereas points remained stable. Therefore, anything he could buy with money, he wouldn't waste points on. A short while later, he drove to a large courtyard in town. Jumping out of the car, Hiroshi walked straight to the gate and knocked. The loud knocking echoed through the courtyard, prompting a gruff, irritable voice to respond. "Who's there?" "It's me, Hiroshi. Open up. It's urgent." Hiroshi's farm was just on the outskirts of town, managed by his family for 2 generations, making him well known in the community. The gate soon opened. A burly, middle-aged man, standing about 1.9 meters tall, holding a half-meter-long steel pipe, and looking quite disheveled with a scruffy beard, appeared. He was Jimmy, a small-time contractor with a few pieces of heavy machinery, including the excavator Hiroshi wanted to borrow. Jimmy frowned upon seeing Hiroshi. "It's you. What's the matter?" "Jimmy, I want to rent your excavator for a few days. How about 800 a day?" Hiroshi smiled. Before the apocalypse, this price wouldn't have been high. But now, with most people struggling to find food, work had dried up for Jimmy, who had been idle for a week without any income. Given the circumstances, Hiroshi's attempt to haggle was reasonable. It wasn't cunning. In a post-apocalyptic world, everyone had to think of themselves first. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. He indeed needed money for food, but renting the excavator is fine, but I don't want money, Jimmy said, waving his hand. "I need food." Jimmy wasn't foolish. In these times, money was nearly useless compared to the scarcity of food. Despite the authorities' efforts, the global food shortage persisted. Recently, Jimmy had stocked up on dry noodles from a supermarket raid, but they would only last a month. He had to plan ahead. "Your family runs a farm. You must have plenty of grain?" Jimmy said, eyes gleaming. "How about this? 10 pounds of rice for a day's rental?" Hiroshi couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, no one was free of self-interest. While he wasn't short of food, he couldn't let anyone know that. "Old friend, you're asking for a lot." Hiroshi chuckled. Even though he had ample supplies, he couldn't appear too affluent. Jimmy felt a bit embarrassed, knowing his demand was high. But survival sometimes meant thickening one's skin. "I don't even have that much rice. How about 3 pounds of flour and half a pound of frozen meat per day?" Hiroshi offered sternly. "You're cutting it too much." "I wanted 10 pounds, Jimmy grumbled. Hiroshi saw through Jimmy's expression and decided to be firm. "Jimmy, understand the times we're in. Your excavator sitting idle is just rusting away. My offer is already generous given how hard it is to buy food now." Jimmy's expression fluctuated as he looked Hiroshi over several times. "I'm not raising the offer. If you refuse, I'll leave. I can always find someone else willing to accept this price," Hiroshi declared. "Wait, no need to say such things between neighbors." Predictably, Jimmy's attitude softened. He hurriedly agreed, "Deal. I'll get the excavator for you right away." Following Jimmy into the courtyard, Hiroshi noticed the steel pipe in his hand. "It's been chaotic lately. My house was robbed the other night," Jimmy explained, noticing Hiroshi's gaze. "If I hadn't hidden the food in advance, we'd be starving now." "Did you report it?" Hiroshi asked. "Report? The police are stretched too thin." Jimmy laughed bitterly. It was a gang targeting grain stores, robbing many places around the south side of the city. "No one can catch them?" Hiroshi asked curiously. The town had a reputation for being tough. Even city thugs had been beaten back by the residents before. "Who dares? They have weapons," Jimmy said, mimicking a gun with his hand. That explained it. 5 minutes later, Jimmy parked a flatbed truck by the gate and loaded the excavator onto it. Hiroshi handed his truck keys to Jimmy. I'll leave this here as collateral. Once I return the excavator, I'll take my truck back. All right, Jimmy agreed readily. I'll drive the machine to your place and collect today's rent. Jimmy parked Hiroshi's truck in his courtyard, locked the gate, and climbed into the flatbed's cabin. As Hiroshi was about to close the door, a hand suddenly grabbed it. Startled, Hiroshi looked over to see three middle-aged women, all around 50, dressed in identical black clothing with a strange lotus-like symbol embroidered on their chests. The lead woman clasped her hands together and looked at Hiroshi. "Aunties, what do you need?" Hiroshi asked warily, sensing something cult-like about them. "We are from the Salvation Society," the lead woman said, her hands still clasped. "And what does this society do?" Hiroshi asked, puzzled. "Young man, do you know the truth behind this catastrophe?" the woman asked mysteriously. Hiroshi did know, but he chose to ask, "Do you?" "Of course. It's divine punishment for human sins. Only by joining our society and sincerely repenting to the gods can you hope to survive," the woman said devoutly. "Are there any conditions to join your society?" Hiroshi asked, feigning interest. "We have a membership system based on animal ranks. For $3,000, you can be a pure sheep. For $8,000, a loyal pig. For $15,000, a devout dog, and for $30,000, a spotless eagle. The higher the rank, the closer to the gods and the greater the chance of salvation," she explained. Hiroshi burst into laughter and flicked a coin into her palm. "If possible, I'd just like to be a simple rice bucket, worry-free." The woman froze, her expression darkening. "How dare you disrespect the gods? Auntie, if you're going to brainwash and scam people, at least get better at it. Your act wouldn't fool even a village donkey." Hiroshi shook his head and shut the door. With a rev of the engine, the flatbed roared away, leaving the three bewildered women behind. "Those who don't believe in the gods will fall to eternal damnation," the lead woman muttered venomously, watching the truck disappear. "You, the cheapest of maggots."